Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel here. It is CoachFury and we are back today with episode 3 of our Coaches Corner of the CBGM, a Draft Day Sports College Basketball 21 online league. And, as we've been doing in this series, we've been talking to different coaches in the league about their teams and styles, philosophy and general sim league, experiences. And I'm back today with the third one. I have Brandon on the line, who is the coach of Stanford and Syracuse in the CBGM. Brandon, welcome to the channel.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yes, great to have a range of people, and this is the first one I think where we've not had a Big Ten coach on, so that kind of crushes the theory that this was only going to be Big Ten coaches on the show itself, which is great. So interested to just kind of kick off really and give us a bit of background in terms of your sim league sort of experience, what type of games you play, and then what kind of got you into the CBGM.
Okay, so I've been playing out of the park baseball for I think since version 11, maybe 12. I actually just recently stopped playing the baseball game and switched over to Wolverine Studios product for basketball and even football just a little bit, but mostly played out of the park baseball for the last 10 years or so, and then just recently got into the college basketball with college basketball 20. And I ran an online league with a few of my buddies. There's probably about 5 or 6 of us total. And one of them's actually in this league as well. It's UCLA. His name's Lloyd. But, or you know what? Actually, he's not UCLA. I lied to you. He tried to get UCLA, but I believe they were taken. So he's Baylor, I think. It might be Butler. It's Butler or Baylor. I can't actually
That's
remember.
not a bad upgrade if it's Baylor.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, that's my experience. I'm still kind of new to the college basketball scene, but I have been playing the game. I've been playing so many hours offline ever since the college basketball 20 version. So I love it. I think it's a great product and definitely the best thing that the basketball simulation market has to offer.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, great to hear your background. I guess first thing I'd like to just delve a little bit more into, and I'm sure viewers are interested, is the world of OOTP. So out of the park baseball, which is a crazy good baseball GM game. For anyone who hasn't played that, I mean, it's gone on leaps and bounds in the past sort of 10 years or so. But I
Yeah.
imagine, I mean, did you play that as single player, or did you join any online leagues in that?
Oh, I actually ran my own online league there for probably close to 10 years.
Oh, okay. So I imagine that is a incredible, just by my understanding of baseball statisticians and baseball GM players, I imagine that is a complete bloodbath and a really um, difficult type of environment to be pretty good in, because I imagine there's a lot of very good people who enjoy baseball games.
Yeah, that's true. It definitely is. It's got a pretty good competitive side to it. You've got a good variance. You got people that are learning the ropes, and then you've got people that, just are trying to get, there are people that are learning the ropes, and you got people that are very, very experienced that have been playing simulation games for 10, 15, 20 years. So it's a good mix. But there's definitely some very, very knowledgeable statisticians, like whatever you want to call them. They're definitely some very smart people that play those out of the park simulation games.
Yeah, I think so, and it's an online league area that's been around for quite a while now. And I guess flipping back to the world of draft day sports and college basketball, as you said, you ran a small league for sort of five of your friends,
Yeah.
I guess it's a little bit less mature in that sense in terms of the online area. But I mean, how have you found it? I mean, you've obviously run a league for a small collective of people. You're now in the CBGM where there are hundreds of coaches and hundreds of teams managed by human GMs. How have you found that in comparing the two?
So, out of the park is of course going to be ahead in, terms of like the utilities and the ease of use for both exporting and downloading the exports and everything. But they're very similar, and I think that Draft Day Sports is doing a pretty good job with this new version in College Basketball 21 in making it a lot easier to have an online league. Before, it was a little bit convoluted in the process that you need in order to export. You would have to always save your game first and then export. And in this version, they actually made it so that your export button saves the game for you and then sends in the export. So I'm not sure if that made sense, but in my mind it did because I know what the
Yeah,
process is.
yeah, it makes sense. Essentially, what you're saying is that now you press one button rather than two. It's
Exactly.
essentially it.
But
Um,
the hard part was that if you didn't save your game first, your export wouldn't have taken because it basically exports the game based on your save data. So I could make changes in college basketball 20, but if I didn't hit save and then I hit export, it would just export the game as I downloaded it, not as I, made the
Yeah,
changes.
yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. It shows that there's progress being made, and I guess one of the great things about the league is that we are robustly testing some of these things, considering we've got so many coaches in the CBGM.
Hmm.
I guess before we talk a little bit about your teams that you've chosen, two interesting teams. I guess in terms of, you obviously played baseball. Is baseball sort of your primary sport, or is basketball your primary sport, or is it football you mentioned in there as well? I mean, is there one that sort of sits on top of the other for you?
Um, for the longest time, I've been a baseball guy, played it my whole life, and ever since I was 4 years old in t-ball, and I love baseball. But it's funny that you bring this up because lately, probably since I was, I don't know, for the last like 7, 8 years, um, I've just had a love for basketball. And I originally had the love for college basketball, but lately I haven't really felt it. I feel like there's too many one and dones, and it kind of ruins the scene for me. And I don't really like NBA too much either because of I feel like there's not a there's like a lack of defense. So it's been hard for me to really enjoy watching it, but I love playing the games. So it's I love
Yeah,
playing this simulation game. So that I feel like has really sparked my enjoyment for basketball a lot more is these college basketball and pro basketball games. But
yeah. I mean, if I can throw a something into the fire for you to maybe consider watching, just on what you said there, check out the Euro League. The format is awful. They've trashed the format now, but the actual game is actually very interesting. It's very technical and very defensive orientated in comparison to the NBA. So
gotcha.
have a little look at that on YouTube. But yeah, so I guess that kind of brings us into talking a little bit about, you mentioned you've enjoyed college basketball in its purest form, probably not necessarily in the form it's in now, but and you like the idea of players probably playing longer than 1 year and then moving on to the pro leagues.
Hmm.
Has that kind of factored into like what your sort of what's your purest sort of sense of how you want to see basketball played, in terms of style and in terms of personnel on the court, etc.
I love I love defensive, games, and that's just how I've loved everything, whether it's football, baseball, basketball. I love seeing good defense. But I think that it just seems like for me when I was watching college basketball earlier 10 years ago or so, not really in the last 5, but like 10 years and before that, it seemed like there was a lot more sense of pride in your team and you'd stay longer. You kind of had that, you go there, you feel like that those players are going to be there for like a 4-year journey, and trying to become the best team that they can be. And now I just feel like it's too many one and dones. And a lot of the times I feel like the guys that leave, they're not even really that good. They're just going for the to get paid because NBA teams just roll the dice on a crapshoot on who's going to become good. It's just it's depressing to see because I feel like the game could become better if we had more people that stayed for longer. But that's just not the case. I mean, you have guys like, look at Kyrie Irving. When he was at Duke, he played what, 3 games, and then went to the draft and got paid. And of course, he's a great ball player, but you just don't see, what could have been. And that's the type of stuff that I just don't like. I like team building. I like seeing guys go through those 4 years or 5 if they're a red shirt, but just go through those 4 years, build that program up, build that camaraderie up, have that school pride, and it just means a lot more when they're on the court. At least that's in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating from to watch. I guess looking at it from a European perspective, it's a bizarre concept, in my opinion, of how college sports is run in America. Something, in my opinion, is going to have to give eventually in terms of funding, in terms of player power. But
Yeah.
but we're not here. We're not here to talk about that. I guess I'm interested in. So obviously, you're really a big fan of building a team, building a roster, building it over 4 years. Is that
Mhm.
something you're looking to try and do in the CBGM? Are you kind of building that roster? I mean, we'll talk about the teams in specific, but you've talked like you like a defensive style of play. So I'm interested to understand, are you going after guys who are going to be there for 4 years, and then what to you consists of making a very good defensive team? What sort of factors do you consider into that? Because there's different styles of defense, for example, to play in a game of basketball. So interested to see how you package all that in terms of your pure basketball philosophy.
Right, right. Well, I can make it so to start the easy way. I just have the best defensive ability players. They're the ones starting and playing the most. I definitely value defensive ability over somebody that was a pure offensive player. So there might be a recruit that my scout thinks is A plus inside outside shooting, A plus scoring. That guy might be hard to pass up. But if he's got an F in defensive ability, I won't go for it. I won't go for him. I definitely make sure that defensive ability is weighted almost as heavily as offensive, if not equally weighted. Just because I don't want to give up 80 points a game. I want to have a good tight defense. I would ideally like a deep bench as well, just because that defensive intensity is going to wear players down, and I want to cycle through players, but it's kind of hard to do in the first season. So for both Stanford and Syracuse, both of my teams have a very small bench. I think there's only 3 people coming off the bench, which isn't terrible, but it's definitely very very small bench. So as far as the style goes, Syracuse is a little bit heavier on the 2-3 zone because that's just what Syracuse does, and that's what the players are used to. Unfortunately for me, when I took over Syracuse, I believe it was because somebody that had them previously kind of neglected them and just didn't export. So I did miss out on a little bit of practice. I believe I got them like right on opening day or something like that, the very first sim. So I didn't get a lot of time to like switch up the practice styles. So in terms of like the offense and the defense, I went with mostly what they were comfortable with and what they already were very knowledgeable in. So Syracuse is a mix of both. I do mix up the 2-3 zone and the man-to-man offense for them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You've given us a really lovely segue into your first team. We're talking about Syracuse here. I mean, I guess interesting observation. Obviously, this is obviously clearly as we say to everyone at the beginning of these coaches corners. I mean, this is not the roster you've put together. This is the roster the AI has put together, and you're obviously going to try and blend your philosophy over time into them. But looking on paper, this is quite an interesting team. You've got a lot of like I would call raw talent. Where it's probably not quite developed yet, and you kind of have a nice opportunity to probably mold them into the style of play you want to play. And your record this season kind of reflects that. Really, it's sort of been a good record, but not a great record.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I wanted us to do better, but we have good players, but we don't have good players at every position. Like if you notice, I have 2 small forwards, and neither of them are all that great. Lots of potential, but the overall is not there. So that definitely hurts. Even the power forwards not really that strong. We got a 3-star, a 2.5-star, and then when it comes to centers, again, not all that much that's there. So I have definitely made it quite tricky with my lineup. I don't know if you could see the depth chart, but I have a center that's playing small forward for me. But yeah, I did. Um, I do have the lineup with it's a pretty peculiar lineup. Maybe not the best, most optimized one, but it's done decent. We've upset Duke, once this year. We've gotten some good wins. We just won our first game of the. Actually, no, we didn't play. Yeah, we won our first game of the ACC tournament against Wake Forest, so that was good. But We had some real tough games. I mean, the ACC is, it's a very tough conference, and I feel like this is a young team for the most part. The players have a lot of potential, but um, yeah, I'm definitely going to be grooming these guys to get more into the style that I want them to play, but definitely some potential here.
Yeah, I mean, let's quickly talk a little bit about the roster depth chart. Obviously, you mentioned there as well at the
Hmm.
beginning there. So yeah, I mean, clearly you're playing Blackman, who is you can see listed here as down as a centre, but I mean, he's not the one of the great things I guess about college is that you have players who just have really random heights at positions that traditionally would in the pro game would just basically not be able to survive there. So
Yeah.
interesting, you've tried to already sort of flex around that based on what style of play you want in your rotation. It's really interesting to see, particularly don't tend to see that very often in sort of a first season where you're just trying to, put some type of capability out on the court, really. I'm interested to get your thoughts, really, in terms of Syracuse. I mean, we'll talk about the recruits you're bringing in a moment, but you've got two really interesting freshmen, in my opinion, in Ryan Matthews and Chad Kimbrough, who are, maybe not quite the finished article yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe either of them have declared to go to the draft either.
Yeah, that's correct. They did not declare. And Kimbrough, I had higher expectations for. He started some games for me, but his efficiency just wasn't that great. I I like his stats, his ratings. I like his skill ratings. He's got pretty good defensive ability, especially for a freshman. I think it's only going to get better. So that's great. Good rebounding, really good passing, great score. Not so much on the inside shooting, but outside shooting is great. And I'm really happy with him as a freshman. I think he's going to become a really good player, but I think his offensive proficiency just isn't there yet, which is holding him back. So he's been coming off of the bench for a good, 16 minutes, roughly for me, and I like him a lot. The other freshman is Ryan Matthews. He's 50 defensive ability, 56 rebounding for offense and defense, 60 shot blocking. Pretty good for a freshman. I'm pretty happy with him as well. I think that both of these guys are going to be really good when it comes to the next few years, so long as they stay through all 3-4 years and stay through their senior year. I think they're going to be really good. I think they're going to be some pretty good pieces for my team. But right now, both of them are coming off the bench and playing about 16 minutes a game each.
Yeah, yeah, and it makes sense. They're freshmen. You want to develop them, but you necessarily they might not be quite ready to probably take some of those starting minutes where you've got other talent in this Syracuse team. You can probably lean on a little bit more early on. I guess we talked a little bit about the kind of defensive style you want to play with this Syracuse team. On the offensive side, are you a bit more flexible with how you play? Do you kind of just wait and see how the land lies with your roster, or is it a case of actually I have a defensive style in mind that you want to run possibly, with Syracuse or with your other team, Stanford? We'll talk about a bit later.
I do like to keep it simple and just let the talent, just shine and really keep it simple. So I always run a motion offense, just because as a primary offense, I think that keep it simple. Guys come in with some knowledge of it, and I just want the talent to shine. I don't want to try to get fancy with it, make them learn something else. Now, for the secondary offense, I try to tailor that a little bit differently to what the roster looks like. So, Syracuse and Stanford, they both primary run that motion, but their second offense is going to change based on what the roster looks like. So, um, it's
Yeah,
actually funny.
yeah.
These teams. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, that makes perfect sense, really. Keep it simple, use the talent, and then flex the secondary offensive set based on, what type of talent you can recruit.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, with us being on brutal recruiting, you never know. And I might have a guy that I really like, and he might have me in his top 3 or top 5, and I might lose him on the last part. You just never know. So I can't really bank on a certain style, but I do have that tailor-made secondary offense that I might switch up every now and then. But for the most part, I stick with it for 2 to 3 seasons, and then I'll start developing towards something different if the roster moves in that direction. It just really depends on what the team looks like at the time.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about your one recruit that you've managed to bring in for Syracuse for next year, which is a point guard from France. You delved into the international market, which I'm fascinated to know a little bit more about as to how you assess that. And I'm sure other people will be on this listing in on this. But you brought in Joseph Desire Carbonell, I think it is. He's a 5'10" point guard, 112 ranking. Positional ranking 22nd. He is a 4-star prospect. I'm really interested to get your take on your view on the international market to begin with, because that's something that I think a lot of people are trying to get to grips with, and in terms of how you see him fitting against someone like Kimbrough, who you've mentioned you want to kind of develop around. So are we looking at a 2-guard system as well?
Well, to be truthful, when I took over Syracuse, it was already past recruiting, so I didn't have anything to work with. So at
Oh,
that
okay,
point,
okay.
yeah. So at
It
that
wasn't
point,
necessarily your recruit then.
nope. I actually don't think he's even committed yet. I think I just have the offer out on him, and I'm in his top 3, I believe.
Yeah,
But
correct. You don't have him yet. Sorry, apologies, but you do have an offer out on him. I
mhm.
guess that's the only guy you're kind of chasing at this point, really, or leaving that
Yeah,
offer in there.
yeah. At this point, I don't have anyone else. I was going after a few, but they decided to sign elsewhere. Like I said, when I took over, literally nothing had been done. There was no recruits at all that I would been contacting for the entire off season. So
Yeah, that's a very tough start to have with this Syracuse team.
for
Definitely.
sure. Yeah, definitely was rough, but good thing is that I only have 2 scholarships left for this season. So with the one being offered to the guard, I feel like, pretty good about having that guard there and having him play either point or shooting guard. I feel like he
Mhm.
can do both. He's got B defense, B plus scoring, good outside shooting, and B minus passing with B minus ball handling. I feel like he could play either guard position. So I wanted him, and then when I looked at all the other options, I just didn't want any of the other guys, so I didn't bother. I figured next year, I'll have a monster recruiting class, and hopefully I can get a really good, strong roster that'll shine, and maybe do something like the Fab Four or something, or Fab Five, whatever they were, and have a whole bunch of freshmen starting in 2 years. Who knows? But yeah, I kind of took this season as a wash in recruiting. I'm gonna hope to land a couple guys in transfer market and possibly have a really strong season going into our 3rd season, because the 2nd season, yeah, it's going to be mostly the same roster for me. I don't have too many seniors, I don't believe, that are playing at the moment. Anyways, Blackman is going to be leaving. That's the center that's playing small forward. But outside of that, I don't believe that I have any seniors playing. So
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe the transfer market could be quite a juicy market this year. I imagine with the way that some players are not liking playing time, etc. From what I've seen looking around, so who knows? Syracuse could have a big transfer market as well. So
mhm.
interesting to understand your plan with Syracuse and the outlook. Should we move on to your second team and talk a little bit about Stanford? I mean, fingers crossed. I'm hoping that there was a little bit more work done with this team than there
Yeah.
was with Syracuse.
Yeah, a little bit more. Also, I forgot to mention this, but I was actually wrong. Chad Kimbrough, the freshman guard, is actually declaring for the draft, so he's going to leave early. We mentioned that earlier, but
Okay, so that makes sense why you've probably kept the offer in for the guard from France then as well.
yep,
Mhm.
yep.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about Stanford.
So Stanford, I this is my most successful team. I'm really excited to watch Stanford because they've just exceeded expectations, finishing the season number 10 overall, and going 26-5, 15-3 in the Pac-12. I'm really happy with. We had some really good wins over some ranked teams here. We beat Arizona, absolutely demolished Arizona, and they were ranked a lot higher at the time, but we crushed them by like 21. We beat Oregon, who's ranked number 13. We beat them by about 15 points. We beat Arizona when they were number 12 by about 14 points, and then the only other ranked game we played, we actually lost to the Oregon Ducks. But outside of that, though, this team I feel like has really come together. They're on a good 8-game win streak, and the the guy that runs Colorado and Notre Dame has beaten up both of my teams pretty bad. His teams are very good, but that was probably the one blemish out of what would have been probably like a 15 game win streak to end the season. If we didn't lose to Colorado, we would have had a really good win streak to end the season. It would have been it actually would have been a 12 games, a 12 game win streak had we won that Colorado game. But as far as how this team is built, similar strategy with Syracuse. I have the motion offense as my primary. I like to keep it simple, and then I tailor that secondary based on what we have, as a in terms of talent. So primary that motion offense, mix in a little bit of triangle. I always run two systems, not three. Every time I've run a third offense, I see way less success, and my offensive set usage is actually a little bit lower. I feel like when I have a more talented team, I like to let them do their own thing and not force them into that set usage. So I keep that pretty low. And then when I'm at like a smaller school with less talent, I like to keep that set usage high, just because the talent's not all there. So I feel like they shine more in a more restricted system. Whereas with guys with talent, I let them do their thing, and it's worked out pretty well for me so far. And our biggest shining spot is Richard Brown, power forward. He's absolutely dominant. He had an amazing season.
Yeah, I mean, really interesting insights into how you set your team up there, and some really useful, what I think are useful tips for anyone who's watching through to the video and gets to this point, and some interesting ideas in terms of how much freedom you give based on talent and offensive styles and systems that you run. But yeah, I mean, my goodness me, Richard Brown, right? I have to say, my opinion of Richard Brown is that he's a phenomenal college basketball player. I think he's going to be a terrible pro player, but
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, the stats he's been putting up this season has been absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. If we can get him up on here. So he's 22, 9 and 2 blocks per game for a 6'6" guy who's playing in sort of the front court positions.
Yeah.
Incredible. And he really has been a driving force for you this season, hasn't he?
Yeah, so when I looked at this team, when I first took over Stanford, I looked and I thought, okay, so obviously I look immediately at the stars, and I see Richard Brown 5-star, so I'm thinking, okay, that's the star player right there, and we've got some really good talent with the 4 stars, and a couple 3 stars, and it's a very talented team for sure. But I knew that with Richard Brown, he's got 100 inside shooting with 89 scoring, and I thought, okay, my team's got to flow through this guy, because I'm also a big believer in the big difference in college is going to be your big guys. Do you have talented big guys? And you can live and die by the 3-pointer with good guard play and everything, but I'm not a fan of that. I'd rather see the big guys go to work. And it's funny because he's not a big guy. He's 6'6", 200 pounds. I mean, that's insane. He's like a stick, and somehow he's absolutely dominating. So it's funny, but he has been the driving force and really the heart and soul of the team here, with 2 blocks per game, almost a double with the 9.6 rebounds and then 22 points. But I knew that the game with that scoring, he had to be the focal point of the offense. So I actually made a motion and a triangle offense. So even when we are doing our offensive set usage, we have that triangle offense trying to work the ball into the post, because I know he's a power forward. He's primarily a post player, 100 inside shooting, 89 scoring. He's going to get the ball. He's going to go to work in the post. That was the mindset. It's paid off really well for us. I'm pretty happy, with the results. We've had some really good wins over some ranked teams, and there's definitely some really good players outside of him. Like the two, Dwayne, the point guard, very good. We've got Marvin Brooks is a good defensive player. Malik Young, another good defensive player. They're all Dwayne's got 76 defensive ability, and then really the weak part of this team, in my opinion, and it's not really a weakness, but the center is probably my least, my most desirable position to upgrade, and my least, favorite position on this team is my center's got a 38 defensive ability. Outside of that, rebounding's good, shot blocking's good, stealing's pretty high. He's pretty good outside of that. But I wish I had a bigger defensive presence at center. And I've toyed around with playing Shannon Foster instead, who's just a little bit better defensively. But I ended up keeping in Horace Ballinger as the center. But yeah, I wanted my team to just be real gritty in the post and play really strong defense, and so far it's worked out.
Yeah, and what I find really fascinating is that you obviously do, on paper, this team doesn't look like a very good defensive team if you just look at the pure ratings.
Mm-hmm.
But just for facts for everyone who's watching, Stanford, they ranked 13th in defensive rating this year, which is crazy when you look at the actual defensive talent, what I would consider on this team, which is a phenomenal bit of coaching in my opinion. So I guess in terms of the team, before we talk a little bit about next couple of years of this team and the recruiting class that I'm not sure whether you've recruited or not, whether it was the AI again for this one, but in terms of Stanford, I mean, I guess what's your expectations this season? I mean, obviously you're going to be in the national tournament. Where do you see this team sort of getting to there?
Well, I'm really excited to see how we do in the Pac-12 tournament for sure. But that's like my biggest thing right now is how do we do in Pac-12, because we did do really well, in the conference, 15-3 in the conference, and I think that this is one of the stronger conferences. I mean, we've got USC that's ranked. Colorado is a very good team that's ran by a very good manager, and that's always going to be a threat. Oregon's ranked number 15, so that's pretty strong. We've got definitely some really good teams, and I believe I actually finished first in the Pac-12. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. Let me just double check. Yeah, well, I guess tied for first because USC's the same record as mine, but I have a better overall record, so I'm not really sure how the tiebreaker's done there. But um, I have hopes for us to win the Pac-12, but I know those teams I mentioned before, USC, Oregon, Colorado, they're all going to be very, very tough. And then as far as the tournament goes, I want to get to the Sweet 16. If we go past that, that'd be great, but I expect to be Sweet 16. I want to get past the first weekend of games and make it to that second weekend. And anything after that is just icing on the cake, but that's my goal.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a very achievable goal for a team that's really performing very well this year. And I guess moving on to think a little bit about the next couple of years, in terms of Stanford, did you have a chance to actually do the recruiting for them, or were you similar situation to Syracuse and you kind of were just stuck with what had already been out there?
I think I ended up getting some, but I joined in like September, October, so a lot of it had already been done, and I didn't have like scouting reports. I believe I got 2 of the players that were signed. No, 3 actually. I got 3 of the players that were signed. The other 2 were already signed for me. So Terrence Cook was signed for me. That is the shooting guard out of Aberdeen. And I did recruit Travis Kurtz. I did recruit Rodney Autry. I did not get Trenton Smith. Trenton Smith is the other one that was already recruited for me. So just those 2. The other 3 guys I did recruit myself.
Yeah, no, really interesting. I guess in terms of those recruits, what sort of skill sets did you see in them to kind of bring them in? Because you do have a lot of seniors rolling off the program this year.
Yeah, I'm pretty upset about that. I wish that I had a little bit more time with some of these guys because they've just been playing so well, like Dwayne and of course Richard Brown. But so I was a little limited in what I could choose from, just because, like I said, I did join a little bit late. It was like late September or something, so a lot of guys had already committed. And in terms of, I guess I can go through it one by one. So in terms of Rodney Autry, that's a 2-star. I really just wanted to get a guy that was going to be a center, and he was the best one available. Pretty good inside shooter. Defense is kind of lackluster, but he's got good rebounding, so I figured he might have a spot. Looking at a guy like Jimmy Romano, I think that might have been the best recruit that I personally recruited. So it's tough for me because I don't have any information on how they did at their basketball camps. And usually that's going to be a pretty big factor in my decision on who to go after. So it's looking like just a lot of these guys are going to be people that I, you know, just grabbed because they had the best skill ratings that at least my scouts thought they did, at the time. So I was kind of just playing cleanup and trying to get the guys that, the best guys that I could. Some of these reports were really good because they said, he's got a good work ethic. He's a hardworking kid. So I'm going to go more for those guys because I feel like they just meet their potentials more. I think the guy I'm most excited for is Travis Kurtz to be the new power forward. He's great outside and inside. B minus defense, B minus scoring, and B rebounding. So I feel like he's going to be a really good player for me. Might be playing as a freshman. Who knows? Um, but yeah, a lot of it was, unfortunately, a lot of it was just me picking up the pieces of what was left.
Yeah, and that always happens if you join slightly late and you get a hoggledy amount of different types of recruits coming in. You kind of have to make quick sense of it, and it'd be interesting to see how you kind of take that recruiting into next season when you actually have a full run at it, really, and see how the Stanford team starts looking then. So I guess in terms of this team, obviously this year you talked about your expectations and ambitions for the national tournament and the Pac-12 tournament. I guess in terms of Stanford going forward, I guess how do you see next year going, and probably the season after that? Where do you want to take this team?
Well, in the season after next, I'm going to be pretty excited because I'll have more of my own guys in there. For next season, I think next season is going to be rough. I think it's going to be a rebuild. We're losing the starting point guard, Daniel Duaney. We're losing our starting shooting guard, Marvin Brooks. He's actually listed as a small forward, but I do play him at shooting guard. We're losing him. We're losing Richard Brown, which is like, the whole team essentially. And we're going to get 4 freshmen coming in. I didn't recruit, but like 3 of them or 2 of them, I think. And those, again, like I said before, those were just guys that I was grabbing. We've got, just a lot of seniors that are leaving, and I'm not really sure if the talent that's left after them is really good potentials. We've got a guy in Chris Dunn who his potentials through the roof, but his actual ratings are just low. Same thing with another guy, Alan Corner. Again, low overall rating, but his potential is a 4-star. So we've got some guys that might come into their own, but all of them right now have really low defensive abilities. And I personally don't want to play them just because their defensive ability is really low, and that's not the type of teams that I want to run. So probably do the same thing with Syracuse and just hit that transfer market and really hope to get a really solid guy to make that good strong push in the 3rd season, but I think the 2nd season is going to be a little bit of a rebuild.
No, that makes sense. I mean, it's difficult when you come in, recruits are already done, and you've got seniors coming off the books. And yeah, I mean, Stanford probably going to be a good season this year. Then a case of rejigging the team to how you want them to play and seeing how that goes. That's really interesting insight into both your teams there. I guess interesting points to kind of end on really for the episode is just to understand a little bit about if you've got any tips or advice for GMs in this who are in the CBGM, anyone who's looking to join, based on your experience of playing, in a multiplayer league with your friends, and then in single player, and now in the CBGM. Have you got any sort of advice or tips for anyone out there?
Yeah, I think that the best thing, we mentioned it earlier and you agreed with me, was keep it simple. Don't try to get too fancy. I personally like to give my players, if they're talented, more freedom, but that controversial. Everyone thinks a little bit differently. That's just my own personal thing. But I do believe that in any sport, doesn't matter what the game is, try to keep it simple, and you try to get too fancy and things can sometimes hinder you in the long run. So I try to keep it simple, let my talented players play, let the talented players carry the team. And yeah, that's really all I got. You don't need to have.
It's a simple message. It's a very simple message. Keep it simple. Simple message.
Exactly.
Keep it simple.
Exactly. You don't need to have 3 and 4 different offenses. Just keep it simple. Get your 2 offenses, let them run it, and then give them a little bit of freedom and let the players play.
Yeah, sounds like some very, very sound advice there. Brandon, thank you very much for coming on for Coach's Corner, and best of luck with Stanford and Syracuse this year and in the next seasons coming up. And I'm sure you're going to be excited to get into the recruiting class next year as well with both of these teams.
Absolutely. Definitely very excited. Seems like a very fun league.
Great, thank you. And if anyone else wants to come in and join and be in the next episode of Coach's Corner, feel free to reach out to me on Discord. We're always looking for other coaches to join in and share their views on their teams or on their build style, philosophy and background. Always interested to hear different views and thoughts. And maybe you can be the next person on the show.